Hello everyone, good evening. Welcome to 13th edition of IGDC. And you know, we have many eminent speakers. Actually have about 120 plus eminent speakers speaking over the next 3 days, and we are going to share very valuable, experiences, insights, trends, and their professional journey, etc. And it's something that we get to learn and hear about. So let's enjoy the next 3 days. So before we start, I would also like to thank our sponsors, presenting sponsor Unreal Engine, gold sponsors AMPL, AWS, Glance, and Jungly Games. And we have legacy silver sponsors GameShin, Lakshya, and YesNo. Bronze sponsors Quali and Game On. Casual track sponsor Sunday, and IP Connect sponsor Succeed in Innovation Fund. Okay, so with that, now I would like to introduce you to Cyril Barrow, who's going to who's with us today, and it's our honor to have him here. And he's going to talk about validation-driven milestones, a modern take on production. Just before we jump into the session, I would like to give you a little brief about Cyril. Right now, Cyril is on a sabbatical, and he's actually building a next modern mobile studio. Of course, hopefully we get to hear a lot more about his plans, but he's a man over 25 years, you know, has worked in multiple industries, starting from hardware manufacturing to mobile game production. And over the last 15 years, Cyril has been building, running, and growing mobile game studios and overseeing products and processes. He has a very envious and illustrious career, and he has been in multiple executive roles. So his last role was as Group GM at EA. He managed 4 studios, including Track 20, which is the home of SimCity Build It. We all know so much about that game, and it's great to know about this. Prior to EA, he was VP of Operations at Rovio, where he modernized the entire production processes. Right? And prior to this, he was studio manager at Gameloft, and he built the Helsinki studio ground up. Okay, so man with so much of experience and so much of background and such a wonderful experience in having built products, he's with us, and we are so happy about it. So what is next for him? He's currently building up a modern mobile studio, and with a few of his visionary co-founders. And obviously, I'm also personally very, very eager to know what is in store for us. What is that, when can we expect some amazing and entertaining games from he and his team? All right. So today, Cyril is going to talk about validation-driven milestones, a modern take on production. Okay. This session covers what and how you validate your hypothesis and assumptions through a structured and inexpensive way. Okay, so it's going to be a very interesting session, and let's all enjoy this. Let's take just a moment before we start the session. Just want to give you an idea of how this session format is all about. So there is about 30 minutes of presentation by Cyril, and he's going to make a presentation and run us through his experiences and on the topic that he has chosen. And then post that, we have about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A. All right. And for the Q&A, when we break, we will tell you about how do we do the Q&A, what audience are expected to do. And once we do that, we also request you to fill up a feedback form. Okay. We will shortly share the feedback form, and it won't take more than a minute. And we definitely request you to please fill the feedback form before the end of this session. All right. So with this intro, I would like to hand over to Cyril.
Thank you, Raju. Thank you very much for the nice intro.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me for this session. So I get it. You want to hear what I'm up to, which is good. I was not necessarily planning to talk about what I'm currently doing, but why not? I'm going to bake that into this presentation. Let me give me a few seconds so I can share properly to everybody. All right. I hope you're able to see the presentation. So yes, we're going to talk about my view on production and trying to be a modern, I've got a bit of white hair here, but I'm trying to be a modern person, modern dad, modern professional. And as I decided to leave a studio behind, a career at EA behind, and thinking about setting up my own studio, I'm trying to have a quite modern view on the future. So let's go back a little bit in history about myself. Yes, I have this particularity that I started my career in hardware manufacturing. And for 10 years, I worked in factories. I learned quite a lot in factories. I learned that if I wanted to change a process, if I wanted to change a 50-ton press, I better be sure that it will yield an improvement. It will have a positive impact. So, of course, when I came to the game industry 15 years ago now, I took that with me and I tried to think about what process improvement means, what we expect from them. And you will see also through this presentation the idea that every time I do something, I'm expecting something. I'm waiting for an outcome that I will gauge against the result of an experiment. I worked at Digital Chocolate. We had an office in Bangalore. My friends in Bangalore saw me quite a lot of time over there. I'm a big fan of India, Indian culture, Indian food. You might even have seen me, looking for vintage Vespa spare part in Carol Bag in New Delhi. That's what I was doing when I was traveling to India back then. And of course, looking after the game of Dichok. I worked at Gameloft, like Raju said. Recently, I worked at Rovio, where I really look at the process about making game, how the stage gate process, how the milestone review could really bring value to the teams and the different studios. And recently, worked at EA. One of the 4 studios was in Hyderabad, Slingshot Studio, looking after the what I call the long tail portfolio, those games that you have learned in India so well how to maintain and bring value for the users, so the long tail games and bringing ads revenue, IAP revenue, but also cross promotion and also a bed for R&D. So this is my career in a nutshell. And just to answer Raju, I am currently looking at the NFT space. NFT is absolutely an amazing landscape that is just unfolding in front of our eyes. And it will be very silly of me to ignore this while I made myself available to think about what could be the future of gaming, but not only. Future of gaming is one thing, but there's a future of making games. Thinking about how can we set up processes inside a studio to be very close to the human, very close to the people, understand people's motivation, understand dynamic between the individuals and the team, etc., etc. So future of gaming, of course, with NFT, but especially a future of making games in how we can make it a very human journey working in the game industry. So let's start with the topic. Validation-driven milestone. And I've always been thinking about what is it, the business that we are in. And I think that the business we are in is not to think that we are the best designer and we know exactly what the market wants and what the player wants to play. We are in the business of having ideas. And those ideas have to be tested by real users. I will add to that if we have ideas and that our goal is to have those ideas tested by real user, we should do that as soon as possible. Because if we reduce the cycle time between I have an idea and hey, users told me what they think about my idea, then I can try again and again and again and faster until I find something that is really worth developing, really is going to have an echo on the market and that people will really enjoy it. I don't think we are in the business of thinking that we have the best ideas, closing our eyes, closing our ears, and going for 18 months production and then putting it on the soft launch to figure out if people are going to use it or not. I think we are in the business of having ideas tested by real users as soon as possible. For example, at Rovio, I have an idea. It's like we take birds, put them in the slingshot, throw them at pigs in order to reclaim the eggs. Oh, that's a great idea. How do we test it? How do we test it as soon as possible? So I change the idea and I say hypothesis. We have hypotheses that are basis of our ideas, that are component of our ideas, and we need to test them. For example, for RPG game, let's say my hypothesis is that players will enjoy collecting characters. My second hypothesis will be that players will select few of the characters and level them up. And my third hypothesis is that with their best character, I think players are going to battle and try to win the leaderboard. So that's three very clear hypotheses that individually can be tested. And as they are being tested, can comfort me in the idea that my game idea or my hypothesis is a good game idea. Hypothesis, which represents the foundation of my game idea, we need to test them as soon as possible by. What I am not saying, though, and this is important, what I am not saying is that we should design the game according to how people play it. What I mean here is that I am not saying that we should put a lot of different variables on our game, put it on a market test, and depending how people play, we will decide how our game is going to look like. We're going to go with the wind. This is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we should have hypotheses about how players are going to play our game. We are designers. We are game makers. We are creative people. So we have to have strong hypotheses. We should lay them down. And we say, I think people are going to play like this because it has a value inside the system that I have created, inside a progression system or a monetization system or a guild system. I've got this hypothesis. But again, I am not saying that we put the bill out there and then we look at how people play and that will define what kind of game we are making, because that is a giant experiment. And to be honest, there are too many variables, way too many variables to be able to handle that. We're not equipped, the industry, humans, ourselves are not equipped to run this giant experiment. There are just too many variables. So again, it is important to start this validation-driven milestone with a view on what is it that I think is going to happen. I'll come to that in a second to illustrate that even better. So of course I have to start with a task-driven milestone. When I started in the industry and until extremely recently, I was driving processes with, hey, once I have a leaderboard and 2 characters and 3 buttons and da-da-dee and da-da-da, my build is ready and I can put it out there and then let's see what are the KPIs. I had this tick box list when everything was done. And to be fair, I remember myself writing on a whiteboard this list of things that needed to be done in order for us to be able to put the build out there. I'm not saying that I'm the best and everybody else is doing wrong. No, I'm saying I did those mistakes myself, but I'm away from that. And I'm sure you can relate to that. Once I have all my box ticked, I was like, good, we're ready, we can go live. But then QA was raising the hand and saying, well, hold on, Cyril. QA is not ready, we have critical bugs. And then there will be a user experience person saying, well, yeah, it's all there, but look, you cannot go from this feature to that feature, from this screen to this screen. It's clunky, it doesn't work, or the button is too small. And somebody else says, it's all there, but there's no FTUE. It's like, we're not bringing to the users this particular feature, so how can they play it? How can they understand it? To be honest, it was quite comfortable to have those yes, but, because if we will put the build out there, we will have instant excuses if it fails. If it fails, we can say, yeah, we had a bug. Or yeah, of course we didn't have FTUE. So my brain was pushing me almost to do this thing because Well, if it fails, I have an excuse. I can go back to the drawing board. I can fix something, and fixing things is very rewarding. And then I could back. So in my career, I have learned to get away from this even milestone because let's be honest, we are not very honest with ourselves whenever we go there. Of course, there are ways to do it better. I'm exaggerating. I'm finding extreme example to make a case here, but this is what it is. So instead, I like better. I like a lot better what I call the validation-driven milestone, and this is somebody that everybody can understand. I've got wires, I've got breakers, and I have a machine that will measure the number of volts that there is in the system, and I'm about to test, right? And everybody will know what number comes to the screen the moment the red pin touches the screw. Everybody will know it's, what is it, 110 volts in India and 220 volts in Finland. By the way, I'm currently based in Finland, so hello from Finland. So we know exactly what we expect. It's not going to be 10. It's not going to be 400. 400 would be horrible. 10 would be what? There's a kind of short circuit. It's either 120 or 220 volts, depending on which country we are. We also know that we expect that the brown wire is linked to the black wire and the blue is linked to the red wire on the main switching board. We expect the breaker to be on the top, not at the bottom. Before I test, before I put the pin, I'm looking at the breakers are on the top. And of course, I'm expecting that I can access the testing point. I can touch the screw. There's no tape on it or there's no obstruction to it. So what it means for us, it means that before I start an experiment, I'm expecting the wiring of my game to exist. I know what features I need in order to be able to test. So I'm not removing the features, but I'm saying that the features themselves are not the center of attention. The testing of the hypothesis is the center of the attention here. So I'm expecting some wires. I'm expecting some wires to touch other wires, so some screen to be able to go to other screen. I'm expecting to be able to touch the testing point. So I'm expecting some KPIs and some flags to have been implemented. And especially here, I'm expecting 110 or 220 volts. When I go to hypothesis testing, I need to lay down my outcome hypothesis. I cannot go in a test saying, let's see what the number is, and based on the number, I will take a decision. Again, that's a little bit dishonest, because once we have the number, we kind of convince ourselves that, it's good enough. No, before we do the test, we should figure out, okay, what is good, what is bad, what is a gray zone, and the gray zone should be as small as possible, if possible, zero. Not all the time easy to define to zero. But it is important that before we go to a test, before I go to a test, I sit down and think, what am I expecting from this test? What is a failed state and what is a success state? And then I go, and then I touch and I look at the numbers and I can compare. So I find this picture quite good because it really takes all the principles that I have in my mind whenever I go to a hypothesis testing picture into one place. Now, there are a couple of points I want to bring to that. So here we're talking about game ideas that are translated to hypotheses. And I have decided that I'm going to test them just to see if my hypotheses are validated by the users. But there are 2 points to the next 2 slides I want to bring. First of all, sometimes it's quite a long journey to get to a testing point. So if I take an example of a 4X game compared to a match 3 game, in order to get the core experience of a match 3, it might take, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, and I could put something out there. But for a 4X, 8 weeks is quite difficult to put something significant that can be tested. The other point is there's something that I want to test. So sometimes in the design of our game, there are things on the way to the test. If I take an example, I'm not sure about this core loop because it's quite innovative. And I'm not sure people are going to enjoy playing this core loop again and again and again for one day, again and again and again for a second day, again and again for a third day. So D3 retention is what I want to test. And I want to see how many sessions people are ready to play every day. I want to see how sticky my core loop is. Now, in the design, I have this economy that has a point system, an energy system, and every time I play a level, there's energy system that is being removed, and at some point I run out of energy and I can buy some. But my validation is not about the energy system, it's not about the monetization, it's not about the shop, it's about, is my core loop sticky? But I have this system that limits the core loop playability. So what I will do, if there's something on the way to my validation, I need to be super clear about what I want to validate and what I don't want to validate, or what doesn't matter at this point. It will matter later, but not now. And I need to remove it. For example, if there is a energy system, just give unlimited, or I give unlimited lives and energy during 3 days, because what I want to see is how many sessions people are ready to play every day, and how many people are coming back day 1, day 2, and day 3. So if there's an obstacle, remove it. Think again, what is it that I need to think, what is it that I want to test? And then I need to make sure that the user can get to this testing point. So that's the first point. The second point is the analogy I had about this Forex and match 3. So some journey are longer, and we might be a little bit impatient. They might be a bit like, damn, I want to know what people are thinking, but I cannot wait that long. So we decide in that case not to go all the way to, was it California? And we decide to stop in Chicago. What is important is not that stopping in Chicago is good or bad, or faster or not faster. That's not important. What is important is what I can test in California is not what I can test in Chicago. So when we had the hypothesis that if I have all those features, people will play this way and that way, that will be the state of California. But I don't have time to test to make all those features, to develop all those features. I can only develop half of them. The big question here is that I can test. And the question is this test, is this validation helping me to get to California? Is helping me to get to my final state of testing, and is going to be beneficial? If the KPI is high, is it good or bad? If it's low, is it good or bad? Can I take action according to the result? So cutting the journey in smaller pieces is good, as long as we are very honest about what is it that we can test. And again, when we test, what are we expecting from the test? And how do we adjust our design with the result of this test? So we have design, we have hypothesis, we have expectation about what the test is going to be and what the outcome is going to be. If there's something on the way, we're going to remove it. If the journey is too long, we're going to chop it in different sections, and we are going to adjust our expectation for each step over. Okay, that's fairly clear. Now we're ready to test. We have our hypothesis, and we're going to test it. And it's quite obvious, but I just wanted to spend a minute on that. There are two sets of data that we're able to collect: qualitative data and quantitative data. Quantitative data is KPI, something we can measure, we can put a numerical value on it. And qualitative data, usually there are words, feelings, opinions, sentences, recorded sentiments, etc., etc. So it is important that we make the differentiation between qualitative data and quantitative. I used to say in the past that 1 + 1 = 3. If we're able to have qualitative and quantitative data, we really have an explosion of the benefits of the testing. And I'm still believing in that. So for example, if I have a D3 measurement in a build and I don't have more content to go past D3, I like to have a survey at the end of D3 to say, okay, what do you think? Do you like this game? Do you like the art style, etc., etc., etc. So in terms of tools, they have to be separated between qualitative and quantitative data. We're going to spend a couple of minutes on those one. So qualitative things we cannot really measure. They survey, so it's a preset of questions asking to people. Direct study, we put a build into somebody's hand, and through the player journey, the player is going to record a certain set of sentiment and feelings and opinions about the build that they are currently playing. The longitudinal is a different take on that. Is basically it's a repeated observation of the same variables, and how do we look at that? And it's really about looking at how players are playing, but not necessarily with the KPI, more about their motivations and their habits within the game. Then there's a supervised and unsupervised test. So there's a value in both of them. Supervised test that you will have a panel of player or individual player, and then you will have somebody who will be managing the test and asking questions and maybe helping if it doesn't work, and being able to have a conversation with the person who's playing the test. The unsupervised is really about just let those people play and see what we can figure out in terms of usability, in terms of expression on the face, etc. And then there's the UA creative test and survey. So I'm not talking here about the quantitative test of UA creative. So UA creative will be an ad, whether it is a screenshot or it's a video. I'm not necessarily looking at the number of clicks we can have on those creative or the cost of people clicking these ads. I'm more talking about, okay, if I show you this creative, what kind of game do you think it is? What kind of sentiments does it bring you? Does it bring you fear, happiness, excitement, slow, fast pace, this kind of thing? And usually we show a creative, can be an icon, can be a screenshot, can be a video, and then there's a set of questions, there's a survey. So those are the qualitative. They require a lot of time to dissect, because usually you have to watch hours of videos. You have to read lines and lines and lines of comments. And then you have to try to group words that are not the same, but refer to the same need, the same motivation, the same frustration. You have to group them into bucket, and then you have to extract some kind of report. And because you can't afford to have too many data point on those ones, it's just extremely long. The signals you can get are usually quite weak, but they are very interesting in the context of also having KPIs and quantitative feedback. So telemetry from market test. Remember the journey from the East Coast to the West Coast, and then this is when we arrive in California. We have a build with all the features. We put it on the market, and then we want to measure D3, and then we have telemetry there. We have number of sessions, what is the funnel conversion, etc. Talking about funnel conversion, we have the funnel analysis, which is one of my favorite tools, especially in new game development. Is we have a very detailed analysis about how many people start the game, how many people click the IDFA screen, how many people make the first tutorial step to the second, to the 10th, to the 20th, and then we look if there's any significant drop in the funnel, and if there's a significant drop which is not flat. Then we can expect that more people are living at this step of the funnel. There might be something, and usually we find maybe some usability issue or readability issue, or what we try to make the player do is not very clear for the player, etc., etc. What else? Fake App Store. So it's a bit scary as a name, but it's what it is. It's like, we want to see if people land on an App Store page, how they will behave. So we can't really do it on the real App Store. So we have this fake App Store, and then we'll see what is their behavior. Do they look at the screenshot? Do they click? Do they download? Is the ad echoing what the App Store is showing, or vice versa? Of course, there's a very standard ads click-through rate and ads cost per install. So we know how many people, if we put ads on Facebook, for example, we know how many people will click on them, and we know how much it will cost to acquire a user. And then in creative performance testing, we have two different creative, one blue and green, one with the dog, one with the cat, and then we figure out, which one is most clicked, which one is cheaper to acquire a user, and this kind of thing. This is just a very high-level list. I didn't want to put too many because it becomes quite boring to list all those tools. But be aware that they're way more than Playtest Cloud. Playtest Cloud is a tool that everybody is using to do survey, diary study, supervised or unsupervised testing. And usually we stop there. We stop at Playtest Cloud, and that's it. It's a great tool. The whole industry is using it, and very glad that they exist because but there is more than that. And that was the message I had today. Is about in terms of qualitative and quantitative testing. There's more than the usual tools that we are using. So be curious and dig. So one last thing that is very close to my heart is looking for signals, not answers. And the best analogy I found in my career is a sailing boat. Because let's face it, it doesn't matter what test we do, we will never have enough data point or enough certainty to know, yes, it works, or no, it doesn't work. There's no test that is so black and white. I mean, it exists, but it's very rare. Majority of the case is like, what do I do with that? It's like, it's never 2% D1 retention, it's never 98% D1 retention. It's like 42. What do I do with 42? Is it good enough nowadays, 42 D1 retention? Or if it's 35, I kind of know it's no. If it's 45, 50, I kind of know it's yes, but there's no black and white answer. So the best analogy I found is like, when you do a test, think you're on a sailing boat. Is your test putting a bit more wind in your sails? Meaning that what you do, the direction you're taking, and the boat that you have, and the vision that you have seems to be the right thing to win that race? Or is the test putting a bit of friction on your hull? Like making you, maybe I'm not doing the right direction. Maybe I don't have the right equipment to be a winner in that vision. So the sailing boat for me is really that. It's about use all the hypothesis testing as data point to make decisions. You have to listen to your wind and your hull. Is there a bit more vibration or a bit more power in your wind? And then make decision. Don't wait for the test to give you the answer. Don't wait for the test to tell you what to do. I have to be decisive. I have to, with the available information that I managed to gather, take a decision. And I love this analogy, by the way. So, conclusion, that's it. So we are in the business of having ideas validated by real users as soon as possible. We focus on testing hypotheses, not having great game ideas. We collect qualitative and quantitative data. And once we have those data, we are not looking for answers, but we're looking for signals that will either challenge or comfort us in the direction that we are taking. And I think this way is a way more modern way to handle production, because each milestone validates hypotheses or challenge you in the hypothesis that I had while starting this journey. And every step is meaningful. Every step is like, all right, seems to me that I'm in the right direction. Let's carry on. What is the next step I want to do? Or maybe my idea was not that good at the end of the day because the hypothesis was not validated or didn't get any signal from the user that they will like it. I think this is meaningful, way more meaningful than having tasks delivered in a build and put out there with usually good excuses to fail. And this is how I think modern production is, and this is how I personally operate, and I'm intending to operate in the new startup that I'm setting up in the NFT world. So that's it. I think I need to stop share, and I need to go back here. So I'm here. Okay, so there are some questions. Give me a sec. I hope we're on time. I think we're on time. Yes, we're on time. Good, 30 minutes. So if you have to remove feature as you reach closer to the deadline and compromise on the value. Okay, I read it out loud. It's a good one. I'll just pick up the first one. So what if you have to remove features as you reach closer to the deadline and compromise on the value of play your game provides? So that's a great question. So we always have the quality cost delivery thing. So it's like, hey, I want to achieve something. What kind of level of quality do I want? What is the cost? Meaning, how many people can I put? How many money I invest in that? And delivery, when can I deliver it? In here, I assume that because there's a deadline, there's a fixed deadline, I have to remove some features from the build, and then what do we do? And that's a great question: is the feature versus the validation we are there? And trust me, I was all about Deadline. I thought Deadline was very great, and I'm still supporting Deadline in a way, but I'm not as much as the validation aspect of it. So it's about Chicago. The answer is about Chicago. You remove a feature because you have the good reason to do so. There is a boss asking you to deliver on that date, and that's fair. I'm not judging. I've been the one asking for delivering on date many times, so it's fine. But Chicago is not San Francisco. So now I'm going to decide to stop in Chicago because I can't go to San Francisco. I thought I was going to, but I can't. So the question is, well, then you decrease the value of the player. So you have to redefine your hypothesis. You have to define your ability to test. Can you test what you wanted to test in San Francisco? No, you can't. You don't have the build. You don't have the scope anymore. So it's really about redefining what can be tested. What do you expect from the test when you stop in Chicago, when you have removed those features, and then decide what do you do with the result. Anticipate the result and what you do. Usually, there's a next leg of your trip that is going to be, well, the feature I couldn't make, I'm going to make it, and then I'm going to test it. But then you can have a meaningful discussion. Otherwise, you're in the old frame where you say, well, the tests are crap, the results are bad, but I've got an excuse. I didn't have the feature I wanted to. And then you don't have a discussion. You're not learning. It's not even having a discussion with your boss or your board or anybody. It's having a discussion with yourself. It's like, no. So you have to redefine what you can test. What are some pointers you can give for a core loop? At time, it is your face. It is in your face, and at times there are too many loops. Okay, I'm not sure. I'll ask Raju to help me with question number 2. I'm not sure I understand it. There's maybe a word I don't. Oh, better. Okay, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you understand the second question?
Yeah. Ishan is trying to ask, what are some pointers you can give for a better core loop? I mean, at times it's in your face, and at times there are too many loops to micromanage.
Okay. So are we talking about, okay, I don't know if it's very interactive here, but so for me, core loop is about the core loop of a game, and how, what are some pointers? Okay. So I'm going to try to answer. I'm going to bring some value here. So even if I don't understand, I'll try to bring something I believe. So we all know that the early retention of a game is really defined by the core loop experience, including the theme of the game, the treatment of the art. But if you take the core loop, so we all understand that the meta game is going to be catering more to the D3, the D7, the D30 retention. And I would say for me, better core loop, when I read better core loop and the question, I'm thinking D1. How do you improve D1? And this is how I translate it as somebody a little bit mechanical here. So the question is, how do you make better core loop, better D1 retention when there are too many core loop to manage? So for me, it's about isolating the variables. So there's testing, you have a hypothesis. Why do you think it doesn't work? Why is D1 not working? You have to lay your hypothesis. Well, my hypothesis in your question is there are too many micro loops to manage. This is the hypothesis you just put on my table. So my question to you is, how do we test it? To remove some micro core loops and test it again and to see if it improves? Or do we simplify, or do we stage those micro core loops so they are brought in a more logical way? So I don't really have a creative or design point of view about how to make better core loop. I just have a more methodical approach to, if something doesn't work, let's lay down a hypothesis why it doesn't work, depending of the game, depending of the designer. And based on that, okay, how do we improve it? We improve because we have the hypothesis that if we remove this micro core loop, it will improve. And what do we need in the build for that? We do that. And then we focus on making sure that players can only play one core loop, and just to see if this is sticky. And if this is sticky, then you can add on top of it. If this is not sticky, then it's not the micro core loop that is the issue, it's the main core loop. And then you have some answer to move forward. The next question is about, okay, plenty of are coming. Oh my God. How do you whoa, too fast. How do you micromanage people who are not willing to do work? Wow, that's very different from the topic I have. Well, of course, I've got opinion. I've been managing people for 25 years, so this is fine. The whole thinking about, you can be a whip cracker. You have a whip in your hand and you crack the whip, and like in a boat, and roll the boat. That would be one way, but no, that's not the way I like. I mean, here again, I'm talking about as a Frenchman living in Finland for for 15 years. So my cultural approach to work might be different than yours, and it's absolutely okay. I am not judging. It's just a different ecosystem and culture that I remember when I was working in China. If you shout, it's not that you're angry, it's just you're teaching. Teaching needs to be loud in China, apparently. I spent quite a lot of time in China. So for me as a Frenchman, oh my God, the manager is shouting. What's happening? It's not respectful, it doesn't work. So not being a whip cracker, being a shepherd. For me, it's a shepherd. The value is in the animal. I want to say the sheep. It sounds very bad now. People are not sheep, but the shepherd has the beauty to put the herd together toward a common goal, a common purpose. Go to that mountain because the grass is greener. And I think being a shepherd is a way better image than being a whip cracker. So it's really going down to the individual, understanding what is the personal motivation, what motivates those specific person in the context of what is needed, because it's not about do what you want, it's about do what you want in the direction that is required. I think it's good values. It's a bit complex topic to speak just in 2 minutes, but that will be my shortcut answer to being a shepherd and micromanage people. But of course, in theory, you don't micromanage people, because people are motivated to work with you and in the context of the game you're making and in the purpose that you have laid for them. How do you become better at setting milestones that are validation driven? I don't know how you're getting better. I have to admit that I haven't done that for 15 years. I've done that for only a few years, and I'm getting better myself. I'm just saying that ask the silly question. If the silly question is anything that sounds weird, when somebody tells you something, just highlight it. Like, hold on, you just told me that, but it sounds weird. Is that? Oh, okay. Now I'm thinking. So because I was doing this. And what I was pointing here is I was pointing as a big post-it where I have the validation that I want in the next milestone. This is a good trick. You take one of those big post-it or white paper, you write, my next milestone is to validate that players will play at least 3 sessions per day. And ETA, 15th of June, 15th of January. You just put it on the wall so everybody remembers. And how do you get better at defining milestone is, first of all, making sure that everything we do, everything that everybody does is contributing to that post-it. And then whenever there are discussion and hold on, did you tell me that? But that doesn't really link with this post-it. It's something else. It's maybe the next post-it or something similar. Is it what you just said or what you're currently doing really helping us to progress with this goal? If the answer is no, it's I'm not against it, but you know what? I'm going to take a small post-it. I'm going to take your task, but not for today. But maybe after we've done that, because this is the highest priority. This is a small trick to focus. It's a bit extreme, because what I'm saying here is don't do anything that is not related to that. But at the beginning, that might what you want to do in order to force the principle of contributing to, again, the big post-it, which should be behind me. I'm in my room now. I don't have a big post-it here. So a simple loop will be better than a complicated loop. But then how do you make my game standard? Okay, so I'm not saying a simple is better than, because define better. Again, is it just the one? You've read that in articles and books, don't confuse depth and complexity. You want to add depth to your game, meaning that once you have a system, you understand the different variables, and you can go and micro tweak some of the variables in order to go from good to better, or from good to best. to climb up the leaderboard, and the depth allows you to be very geeky about your game, to feel that you really control the systems of your game, to feel that you're really good at it. And when you see yourself on the top of the leaderboard, you know why? Because you understood it. You played that system that was designed for you. Now, complexity is something else. Complexity is something that I cannot understand. I'm a casual player, so I see complexity as soon as, it's like, what do they want me to do? Like click, 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 click. I didn't read the story. I didn't read the FTUE. I didn't read the tutorial, but I want to play. I got no idea what I'm doing. For me, this is complexity. And so I'm not saying that the complex loop is better at all. I'm just saying that you have to test it. You have to define what your hypothesis. My hypothesis is better for my game, and is going to make my game stand out. Go for it. What do you need? You need a complex loop in your build. You need to put it on the market, and you need to see if it stands out. I don't know what that means, but you can define it. So it's a good hypothesis, though. I will disagree with it, but I think it's a great exercise for this talk. It's like you have a clear hypothesis, complex loop equal standing out. Go and test it, and then figure out for yourself. I think it's a great question. Thank you. Me in your game observed. The game also seems to be like reskin of an already popular game. Yes, just basically adding some feature and new creative change. Yes, is it fair, as if to say we were inspired by their idea? So the question is it fair, as if to say? I don't think there's copyright on game ideas and loops and meta. I mean, we've seen how the whole industry has been built on being inspired by games that were okay and make them great, or adding something, adding a theme, adding an economy system, adding a PvP system, a co-op system. The whole industry is for that. I don't think you need to say it. There's a place that you need to write it. Well, I don't think you need to write it on your website. We were inspired by hardcore gamers or aficionado gamer. We recognize that. Okay, hold on, this. I recognize this game. It's a bit like this game, but it's a bit different because it's this. But those people, there are few people overall. Majority of the people that you're able to acquire, especially in the casual genre, they are new players and they have not a clue about the other game that you just copied. That's just the first time they play this type of game and they just like it. Maybe through word of mouth and virality. So if I understood the question correctly, I think it's absolutely fine to be inspired by others, and it's fine as long as you add value. If you just do a reskin, I think the value is quite small, and you have to ask yourself, is this what you want to do with your life? Like, do a reskin, what's your goal? I like innovation. I like to think differently. Raju, thinking about time, how are we doing? Do I have time for one more question?
Yeah, I think we are, running out of time. Also, the whole schedule will kind of push other things. Yeah, but if you could take this as a last question, and
I'll have a very quick one. It's simple. I like the book. Any book you recommend? So I'm not going to go with the boring lean startup and production and whatever. I got great books about statistics and production and lean startup and all this I got. But no, read about Bitcoin. so anything I'm reading, is it bubble or bubble of something, blockchain, Bitcoin, something. I'm just learning all the basis about this new. I mean, this is exciting. This is the future. Nobody knows what the future is made of. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody's talking about it, and some people will figure out a great way to add value to the gaming ecosystem. So I would say if you want to be a bit offbeat at the moment, not mainstream, but offbeat at the moment, read about that because we are right in the middle of it. It would be silly to ignore it. So bubble or revolution, it's called. Bubble or revolution.
right. Yeah.
That's it for me.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Cyril. And it was very insightful. I'm not so close to free-to-play games and mobile games. I'm more towards providing art services for the console games, etc. So, but it's quite interesting to see, especially it speaks about your experience and depth in the and the knowledge that you have. It's so useful and informative for us, and we would definitely welcome veterans like you to help the gaming industry or the game developers in India and our fraternity here. You know, um,
It's a pleasure.
we may not be there yet, but we would love to be there at one day. We would like to
You're not
play.
far. Huh? You're really
Yeah,
really not far. I really
yeah,
like the gaming culture that India has built up over the last decades. I love it. I don't think you're very far.
yeah. And I wasn't aware about your, Indian connection. So we would love to have you here in India next time.
I'm taking the first flight. I love India.
So yeah, and we really thank you so much, and taking us through your presentation, helping us with your, all your knowledge, and especially on this topic about validation of your hypothesis. And it's a great topic for us, and we are so happy and thank you so much.
You're
On
welcome.
behalf of
Thank you
the
for having me,
audience and
Raju.
everyone, we really thank you. And I really thank all the audience as well participating and enjoying this session. And there are more sessions coming up, and please enjoy them. Next session starts at 7:30, and we have Grant Schonkweiler, who's an ex-producer on Fortnite, currently runs his own consultancy. He has some experiences to share. What are the lessons that he learned, and what are the good practices, and you know current and future trends? Please attend, and you will find that in the schedule. So once again, thank you so much, Cyril, and we love to have you here, and we will continue to have you. We will again come back to you next year with more insights from you, and we wish you the best luck with your new studio, and we look forward to
Thank you.
great things coming from your studio.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me
Yeah,
today. It was a pleasure.
thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Please do not forget to fill the feedback form, please. It helps, Cyril. It helps us also to improve our, sessions, etc. So we look forward to your feedback. And it is available in handouts, and it's also available in the chat. So please fill it in. It just takes less than 30 seconds. Please help us with your feedback. Thank you so much. Take care.